Good day everyone and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be discussing One Piece chapter 1033 titled Shimotsuki Kozaboro. So of course before we begin, spoiler warning. Also if you're new here, consider hitting like, subscribe, all that good stuff, turn on the bell for other videos. We do a variety of videos here, so feel free to check those out. So yeah, let's dive straight into the chapter. So the chapter begins and the cover page is Smoker and Teshigi, who we haven't seen in ages in the anime nor the manga. I think the last time we saw them was Punk Hazard, but this cover page is a request, and of course it is Smoker and Teshigi in an icy area. Basically Teshigi is dressed as a killer whale and the penguins have defeated her being the bad guy, and they're the good guys because we know these killer whales like to eat and play with everything, and they tend to eat penguins. So the penguin with the little cardboard sword has defeated Teshigi. So yeah. Now we jump straight into the chapter and it picks up right where the last one left off, of course. So we see Enma draining Zoro of his haki, kind of like when he first got the sword. So we have that, and Zoro is asking who gave it permission to do this, and we see King asking him what's wrong if he's having an argument, and King flies up to him and stops dead in front of him, and Zoro is confused about this. So he's like, and he proceeds to stab King in the stomach with his sword, and King says jackpot and explodes, kind of like a Voltorb using self-destructing Pokemon. You see a huge explosion. Zoro kind of goes flying a bit because part of the island is destroyed, and we see, or we cut to one page then of Sanji and Queen, and basically Queen is like, so that snail just now, that Mushi, that was Zoro you was talking to, right? He's dealing with King. He probably won't be able to defeat King, of course. And now Sanji is like, why is that? And he tells him, well, he proceeds to tell him that King is a member of the Lunarian tribe. They're extinct now, and they're capable of surviving in any natural environment. What that means, no idea. But Sanji asks him, well, I mean, if they could survive anywhere, why did they die? And King is like, well, Queen is like, you know what, go ask Estriwood, and proceeds to fire a laser beam at him. We then cut back to Zoro now. And as I said before, we see pieces of the island falling apart still after that little explosion. And Zoro is on the ground, he's there, and he basically says that that explosion probably could have killed him if he didn't use armament haki to enforce his body, keep him steady, you know. But he goes for his big attack now, trying to get rid of King, and he uses Itoryu Shishi Son. He slashes King directly up the head, chest, directly in the middle, and we see I guess what seems to be smoke emanating from King where he's slashed, and King without hesitation just goes into his Petrodon hybrid form instantly and uses his tempura udon or imperial deep fried steak attack, where he pulls the back of his head and slingshots it forward, I guess, to counter Zoro. And when Zoro is about to kinda block, Enma starts using up his haki again, so Zoro kinda falters and gets hit right on the side here, and we see tempura udon or imperial fried steak, whichever one you want to call it, destroys the next part of the island. But this time it sends Zoro flying off of Onigashima with his sword. And while he's doing that, King is like, a swordsman held back by his own swords. First time I'm seeing that. Interesting. But Zoro proceeds to catch Kita Sandai, Sandai Kitetsu. I was going to combine those two words, I don't know why. But and this leads to Zoro having many flashbacks now while gathering back his sword. So we see him and Hitetsu, not Hitetsu, is it Hitetsu? Tengu. Yeah, the Tengu guy, forgot his name. We haven't seen him in ages, so I think the last time we saw him he was with Otoko in Flower Capital. But essentially we get a flashback to Zoro being told by him that he has the Kitetsu tree, and that's his sword that he created. And then we see when Zoro sold the sword by the swordsman all the way back in, is it lockdown? No, it was after lockdown. Way back when he threw the sword up in the air to catch it, and the guy told him, this would be like killing you if I sell you the sword. But Zoro is falling, grabbing his sword. I think King then proceeds to kick him or fly towards him and hit him. But in doing so, when Zoro lands, he sees Wado Ichimonji on the ground now. So he has Kitetsu, he grabs Wado. And he gets a flashback of that and Kuina. And then Tengu goes back to telling him that it's kinda interesting, or maybe fate, that Wado was created by the same person who created Enma. And Zoro to himself is thinking it all came so sudden that it was kind of hard to put everything back together. It wasn't he didn't have time putting the stories together. So basically, while he's getting tossed around, he's remembering all these things and kind of putting pieces together. So again, during that mini flashback, then King launches a next attack called Imperial Slings and Arrows, where it seems to be, I'm not sure if he's throwing fire or it's just shooting off of him. But King then asks him if he has all three swords, and Zoro then sees Enma and he grabs it. But when he grabs Enma, of course, Haki begins to suck away from his hand again, and he's falling down into what seems to be back into Onigashima itself, or into a room in Onigashima. And while he's falling, he has a flashback again. And this time he has a more important flashback than out of all the rest, and we cut back to now younger Zoro. And we remember that he told Momo to use the word snatchy in the past, and we get why that is now, because we know he said an old man taught him that in the past from his village. So we now cut to essentially what that was, and we find out that when Zoro was younger and when Kuina was still alive, he would train to kind of beat her, but he would always lose. So we get that when he was small, one time after he lost, he went to the cliff sides, it seems, and he met this old geezer fishing, the old man of the village fishing, and the old man told him to use snatchy when he's training because it would give him strength. It's a magical word to use. And we see Zoro training with his swords, and the old man there is telling him that you're not that good basically, but train, you'll probably get better. But Zoro and the old man is talking on. The old man is telling Zoro is asking the old man about it. He's like, so I heard you're a samurai, and the old man was like, yeah, shut up about that, or the Navy's gonna come and take me away. And Zoro is like, fine, you will fart, and he stops. But the old man asks Zoro, if the dojo is boring and why he's training here. And basically Zoro says he needs more practice again because he keeps losing to Kuina, and the old man gives him 2 swords. And this is where we get a bit of an info dump, but essentially the old man says, long ago he could make swords. He was a great swordsmith, and basically swords are like knives or kitchen knives. They're made or crafted to do things kind of like knives are made to cut food and all of that. Swords are made to kill people, and a blacksmith owns this craft so that his weapons are better at killing than the others. So it's like, yikes. But he basically tells Zoro something important as well, and that is that a sword has its own personality, and it's the swordsman's duty to master this and bend the sword to his will and not the other way around. So he begins, I guess, telling Zoro about swords, teaching him more about it while he was younger, and this is where he mentions curse blades now, because he says, people think a curse blade is dangerous or it's a bad thing, but no, a curse blade is more of a sign of a great quality sword, because when somebody is weak, they fear a strong sword and they give it that title, cursed. And we know, like with Zoro's Kitetsu, it would always cut deeper than he wanted it to, or draw blood when he didn't want it to. So more about trying to bend the sword and not let the sword bend you. But he then goes into interesting detail, and that is, he mentions that he made a sword way back in the day, and this sword was made when he was younger, of course, and it was so deadly. It had this disposition where it was such an intense sword. It had these intense abilities, I guess, because Enma has an ability kind of to drain your haki, but essentially the sword was so strong that he named it, or gave it the name, the King of the Underworld, or the King who watches over hell. And of course that name is Enma from Japanese lore. Right. Now Zoro cuts back to present time again and kind of connects the dots. Like I said, while he's being tossed around by King, he's kind of connecting dots in his head. And he's like, the King of the Underworld, Enma. My village is named Shimotsuki Village. Ew, that man is the man who made Enma. So Zoro is just like that in his head, because he has the shock face. So basically he's like, he connects the dots and he realizes that this old man was actually the old man who made my sword, and Wado Ichimonji. And so in his head it's like, a sword chooses its wielder, because again he was told that by the guy who sold them Kitetsu so long ago, but Zoro is reminiscing now, and he's like, a sword chooses its wielder. So this sword basically came to me, it chose me so it could test me. So, how am I going to wield this sword? Because a sword is honest and direct, it is not wicked. And Zoro says that it was his strength that was lacking. And how is he going to be able to use this sword? Because this sword absorbs so much haki, but even Odin was able to use this sword. And he says that Odin wielded you like you were some kind of lightweight sword, like you was light as a feather. Why was that? So Zoro is trying to figure out how to wield Enma now. And while he's doing that, we see a bunch of soldiers surrounding him. And Zoro is again stating, in his head, he's trying to figure out, how do I stabilize my haki and use this? Because if I keep expelling all this haki, I'll die. And while he's holding the sword, we see his arm kind of goes back to normal, and the soldiers start fainting. And King is like, he sees, so you intend to be a king then. Then we get the call back to Luffy when he met Zoro, and Zoro tell him he will become the greatest swordsman. And Luffy said, that's great, because anything lower than that would be weak, because I intend to be the king of the pirates. And then basically Zoro ends the chapter saying, you know what? I do intend to be strong, because King asked him if you intend to be a king. I think he asks him if you have kingly ambitions in the unofficial. So yeah, I think that sounds better. But Zoro is like, yes, I do. I intend to keep my promises. I have a promise to my captain and my best friend to keep. And the chapter ends with Zoro smiling with his 3 swords in his mouth. So, interesting chapter. Zoro-centric chapter. We got flashbacks, we got info dumps, we got a lot going on with this chapter. So, the old man in Zoro's village who escaped Wano 50 years ago was Kosoburo Shimatsuki. They started the village, and that's why Zoro ended up with Wado Ichimonji and all of that. And we know Kuina is his granddaughter. So that means the leader of the dojo, I forgot his name, would have been Kozaboro's son. Yeah, but I digress. This chapter was a lot of information that we needed with regards to swords. I see Zoro kinda using this information now to master these three swords, bending them to his will. So far, Wado has never given him problems. The only problem swords he had was Kitetsu, and he now got it, and now Enma. So maybe he resolves all of that by the end of this fight, or maybe he gets a black blade. Or, as the theory goes, maybe he opens his eyes and uses King's Haki or some new ability. But we know that Zoro has King's Haki. It seems that he's embracing it a bit now. But again, we still have a lot to go to see this progress of Zoro, because he's now connecting the dots. He's now connected the dots, then I should say, as to the history between his swords, the origins, and all of that. So there's some theories stating that Kitetsu will die or break because it's a sword. So it will break and he will get the Nidai Kitetsu instead at the end of the arc. Let's wait and see on that. Maybe that happens. But good chapter, very good Zoro-centric chapter filled with information, more lore. I think we needed that, especially seeing as this arc was kinda pushing Zoro to the forefront of being like his type of arc, being a swordsman and samurai. So let's see how they wrap Zoro's story up at the end of this arc, if there's any big revelations with regards to his parents or heritage, or him being related to Ashimotsuki maybe. But yeah, all in all, a very good chapter. I would give this chapter 10 out of 10 because it was awesome. And yeah, I'll see you all next week. I don't think there's a break, so next week for the next chapter. And of course, again, if you're new, consider hitting like, hitting subscribe. We're stuck at 208 subscribers. Let's try to raise that count. So yeah, I'll see you all